because of her philosophy, her objectivism, she ended up with weird notions of what an object is. And I covered that last week, so I'll just go real quick through it. She ended up believing that air and water are not physical objects, even though we can grasp them with the senses. I mean, hopefully you can wave your hand and touch air. You feel something there. We'll call that air, right? Gas, whatever you want to call it. And you also have water. Hopefully you can see and touch water. And she says those are not objects, and it's not an entity. And because they are not entities to begin with, and only entities can exist, then you have to conclude from her line of reasoning that water and air do not exist. That's her logic. Okay? That's objectively her logic. And I'm sure a lot of people don't like it, what I'm saying. I'm talking about objective. I don't care what you interpreted. I don't care what your philosophy is. I don't care if you love Ayn Rand. Okay? I'm talking about objective analysis of what Ayn Rand wrote. Okay? And she says that fluids are not entities. And then she's going to say that only entities exist, which by logic says that water and air do not exist according to Ayn Rand, because she does it all with see and touch. And I know you're going to beat me up. I know you don't like what I'm saying. I'm just telling you what is objectively in her writing. She did not realize this, and again, because she didn't do a thorough study of ontology, of what exists. She wanted to do politics and behavior. She wanted to do ethics. What is right and wrong? What is the best form of government? And so she cared very little about existence. She just slurred over it. She did it superficially and said, let's continue. And I want to point out that she failed at ontology. She failed at defining what an entity is and what exist means. Okay, that's the point I'm trying to make here. Okay, and here's another, I'm just going to rub it in until it hurts. Okay, here's another notion that she had. Existence, she says reality exists. Okay, existence exists. That's poetry. Great, love it. Great for a song. She included the observer. These are the criticisms I have about her. Knowledge, consciousness, perception, see, touch, senses. That's all she talked about. Okay, so again, existence was subjective according to her. Something exists which one perceives. No. Something exists which matches the definition of existence. That's what exists. You can't say that something exists because you can touch or see it, because we cannot see or touch a magnetic field. And I'm not talking about one where you would pour iron filings over. I'm talking about a lodestone you find in the middle of nowhere. How do you know it's a lodestone? How do you know it's got a magnetic field around it if you can't see or touch it? Okay, you would have to bring the iron filings or another magnet and say, well, let's see if this is a lodestone. And then if it attracts it, you say, oh, it's got a magnetic field. But you would not know that. You would not realize that. You would not visualize that unless you did some kind of test. If you just look at a lodestone, you can't tell whether it's got a magnetic field, and you can pass your hand around there and you won't touch the magnetic field. So that's a lousy criteria for existence, what she proposed. She says, which one perceives. Okay? We have to know whether a lodestone has a magnetic field before we run any test. I show you a stone out there, in the middle of nowhere. Does it have a magnetic field around it? Surely you will not be able to see it, do it through see and touch. Now, if I put you alone in the universe with a lodestone, tell me if it's got a magnetic field and your life is on the line. Are you going to say that it does or doesn't? Okay? You have nothing else with which to test it except your hand and your eyes. Okay? So no, her notion was wrong, and that's why she ended up going around in circles. She says sensation tells man that entity, right? That an entity exists. And if that's the case, if sensation tells you, then air and water exist. But she said that those were not entities. Okay? So you figure it out. Okay? And of course she did the same errors that human Kant did. She couldn't tell the difference between exist and entity, exist and thing. She could not tell me whether a thing what the difference between thing and exist is. Okay. Okay, and because of this, she also included, things which are completely erroneous, and I'll put her, I guess, on this side here. Okay, and she concluded, okay, erroneously again, that you have atoms and subatomic particles. Well, how did she know? Did she touch them? Did she smell them? Did she see them? She just takes for granted that they exist. And she says that energy also exists, which is a concept. So here we have entities such as water and air, which are not entities according to her, and therefore do not exist because entities exist, and what those things which are not entities do not exist. So water and air do not exist, fluids do not exist according to her, but energy, which is a concept, does exist. And I know you don't like what I'm saying. It hurts, but I'm telling you what her reasoning was, or what her reasoning led to. She did not have this very crisply in her mind of what ontology was. In other words, what things truly exist and what things don't exist, because she never defined entity very precisely, very rigorously, and therefore she could not figure out, existence as well. And so what are the problems that I point out with Ayn's notion of existence? Well, here they are. Is A an entity or a concept? We have A, right? Whatever A is. We have to determine whether it's an entity or a concept. She never figured that out. She ended up saying that energy and energy existed, was an entity apparently in her mind, and so were subatomic particles, right? And on the other hand, water and air were not. And then the question is, in her mind, did concepts exist or not? Well, energy is a concept, and she put it under existence. So no, she had a mumble jumbo in her head. She did not figure out that energy was a concept, and there is no physical object called energy is not an entity, and therefore energy cannot be said to exist. She's playing around with words that she didn't not understand. Because you can say, well, she was not a physicist. Well, she was trying to do ontology. So you can't excuse her by saying, well, she was not a physicist. We're all physicists. Anyone who uses the word exist in a debate, discussion, dissertation has crossed the line into physics, whether he knows it or not. He's a physicist at that moment in time, okay, whether that person knows it or not. And what is an entity? According to Ayn, it was see-touch. That's the criteria she used. She said perception, senses. Okay? She did use that. On the one hand, she said that's what you can point to. Fine. She would have stopped there. She would have been more or less in the ballpark, because all you can point to is shape. You can't point to that which has no shape. You can't point to nothing, okay, to space. What you're pointing to is not space, okay? You're pointing to a dark stuff that you have not figured out what it is, because you have not defined what an object is. And if an object is that which has shape, space does not have shape, because space is nothing. Nothing does not have shape. That's the definition of nothing. That which doesn't have shape. Okay, that's the way it's got to be used in a rational way. Okay, and so she had all these issues. In rational science, very straightforward. Physical presence. What does that mean? Physical refers to an object, and presence refers to location. If the object has location, it exists by definition. Okay?